Welcome. This is Kevin Yaley, your head of school, and thank you for setting aside some time to learn about the state of the school. The presentation that I'm about to give is exactly the presentation that I delivered to the Parents Association in early September. So here's what I'd love to do. I'd love to give you an overview. And as I thought about starting this, I thought it's probably best just to cut to the chase, that I should address those issues that are topics of conversation, the issues that are very pressing, the issues that are potentially controversial, and the things that people are talking about most. And so that's exactly what I'd like to do. So to begin, here's what we need to discuss. That's not true. That is just trying to get a cheap laugh from you. So hopefully there's a little laughter going on. But in truth, here's what I'd love to do. I want to give you an overview of the school. I want you to know how we're doing. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 5 areas. And it's always hard to measure the health of a school because there's so many things we need to look at, so many variables. But I believe that if we look at these 5, our finances, our admissions, our college matriculation, where our kids end up going, our educational program and the strength therein, and then our focus on student wellness, I think that that should give us a very fair, honest, objective picture of how we're doing as an institution. And once I've done that, I want to cover with you 4 areas of focus, the things that we are currently working on this year and that we will be focusing on for the years to come. And those 4 areas are our accreditation, or also known as our self-study, the strategic plan that we are now in the process of writing by collecting some early data, the Centennial Celebration that's going on as we speak, and then of course what we call sustainability, and that is making sure that the Parker we know and love and the education we offer our kids is here next year, in 5 years, and in many years down the road. So that's the overview, and with that I'd like to jump right in. First of all, finances. It's important that you, as a tuition-paying parent, know how we're doing financially. Over the last couple of years, we made some significant changes, and it started with new leadership. I brought in a gentleman by the name of Mike Reinhardt, who is now in charge of our finance and operations, and I will tell you, he is doing an extraordinary job. In particular, one of the first things he did is he set up a much stronger organizational structure and oversight. In other words, we made sure that areas where we might have had some exposure, he has put in place new controls or tightened existing controls. He's also made sure that we have a very transparent set of checks and balances that are going on. He's also increased the accountability in the office, and then also the transparency in terms of financial reporting to the Board of Trustees and also to you as parents. And what he's also done is he has identified ways that we can be more efficient. And what I mean there is, are there opportunities for us to save some dollars, but in no way compromise the quality of your child's education. And so he's done a great job of that. There's plenty of work to be done, but in terms of our financial health, I will tell you that we're doing quite well. Admissions is another indicator that we look at to determine how we're doing. And there's really 3 areas that we look at on an annual basis. And those areas are attrition, selectivity, and yield. And we like to look at how we've been doing over a course of 4 to 5 years, but then also how we benchmark against other like schools, both the schools in the San Diego community and then on a regional and national level. So let me start with attrition. Again, as a reminder, attrition is the number of families at the end of a year that choose not to return. The opposite of it, of course, is retention. And so if you look at our attrition over the last 4 years, we lose on average of about 50 students a year now. As a reminder, we have 1,235 students that attend Francis Parker School. As a percent, that's about 4 to 5%. So in any given year, we are losing 4 to 5% of our families. Give you a little bit of context, on a national level, you will rarely find a school that has less attrition than that. So we're doing extremely well. And this to me is the most important indicator, because what it says is that our current families who know us, who experience us, and whose children are getting the education are saying year over year, we want to come back. So when it comes to admissions, I think this is probably the most important indicator. We won't rest on our laurels. We do everything we can to make sure that our current parents, you and your children, are getting the absolute best value for your investment in Francis Parker. The second thing we look at is we look at selectivity. This is also known as the acceptance rate. So it's really, the number of contracts we issue over the number of applicants that we have. And so what you see as we look at it is that we are seeing our upper school, primarily our 9th grade admissions, become increasingly competitive. So in this last year, where you see the 21% in the lower right-hand corner, that's telling us that for every 5 applications submitted to the 9th grade class, we're accepting 1. It's remained fairly constant at the lower school. It's about a 2-to-1 ratio, and the middle school, it's right about a 3-to-1 ratio, a little bit above that. So again, we look at it internally and we see a trend where it's becoming more competitive at the upper school. We look at it both locally and regionally, and these numbers are extremely strong. And we want to continue to become really a very selective school. And the last thing we look at is we look at yield. And again, this is the number of families that accept us. In other words, we issue contracts, and not all families will end up choosing us because this is a competitive environment. But in simple numbers, if we issue 100 contracts, if our yield is 79 or 80%, that means 80 of the 100 contracts issued, they accept us at Parker. So rule of thumb is you want high yield and low attrition. The second piece to look at is college matriculation. Again, it's not all about simply getting into college, but for us it's about making sure these kids are prepared for college and that they get into the right college. So I'm going to give you an overview of how we've done in terms of our college matriculation, but I want you to do it in the context of our college mission, our college counseling office mission. And it's very important because as you read this mission statement that comes from our college counseling office, that it really is about process. It's about the journey. It's about each of our Parker students having that opportunity to self-reflect, to identify areas in which they are passionate, in which they are strong, for them to make really educated and informed decisions about what's the right school for me. And the last paragraph, recognizing that it's not simply about getting into college, but it's about getting into the right college, being prepared for that college, and then being prepared for what's beyond college. And as you see, it ends that really it's about making sure that these kids will become really strong, confident, empowered individuals who will become members of our society and citizens of our world. So that's the mission we start with. We then celebrate the fact that kids end up going all over the map. And here's what I mean. This is just a snapshot of last year's class, Parker class of 2012. We had 110 kids in that class, and you can see that those 110 graduates are now in college at 61 different locations in 21 different states. We did have a student head over to St. Andrews in Scotland. The West still remains the most popular location of choice, with the 3 most popular schools for Parker graduates being USC, Stanford, and Santa Clara. A majority of our kids do stay in California from the West, but you'll see also that our kids really do diversify. And we have 34 kids that are heading to the Northeast, or are there now, calling schools like NYU, BC, Yale, and BU their new home. The South was popular for the class of 2012, schools like Virginia Tech, Duke, and SMU. What we find interesting is that the minority of our kids end up going to the UC Cal State system. That is not a slight against those schools. Those are some of the best schools when you look at the Berkeleys and the UCLAs and the likes. But 75% of our kids are choosing to stay in private institutions. And we also see that there are new schools that pop up on the list every year, and it's great to see schools like University of Portland, Virginia Tech, and Vanderbilt that were back on the map this year. Well, let's take a look at the class of 2012. It really was an impressive class. We never simply look at one class. We always look at 4 years of classes, but just so you can see how this class did, again, very successful class, as was the case with 2011 and 2010. But 37% of our students received at least one acceptance from this group of schools, and it's a pretty strong group as you read through it. If you skip down to the 4th point there, Barron's publishes on an annual basis a listing of all colleges and universities in categories. These are their categories, they're not our categories, but the two highest categories are most competitive and then the second being highly competitive. And so it's a benchmark we can use. We're not suggesting that those schools are any better than other schools, but nearly 90% of all Parker students are being admitted into those most or highly competitive schools. So we're proud of our kids, but again, what matters most to us is that they end up at the right school, that it's a competitive school, and that they're prepared and that they will succeed. And we always talk about how tough it is to get into schools, and I've been guilty of saying, boy, if I was going through Parker today, I don't know that I'd get into my alma mater. You may have said the same, because the odds are getting pretty tough, and you can see these are just some examples. The UCs, Berkeley and UCLA's example, just the sheer number of applications, UCLA with over 72,000 applications. And in parentheses is again the acceptance rate or the selectivity of those schools, and then we've listed some other ones down there. And we read those and we can become very intimidated and think there's no way to get in. But in truth, our Parker kids do extraordinarily well, and I can tell you that the acceptance rate of all of these schools, in fact, of every school, Parker's rate of acceptance into those schools is higher than their national acceptance rate. So rest assured, Parker kids are doing very well, and they're getting into the right schools. Educational program. 4 things that I want to highlight very quickly. First and foremost, it is about making sure that we offer your kids the absolute best in their academic preparation. But equally important is that our kids are well, that they're healthy, they're happy, they're balanced, both athletically and artistically. And then technology, you can see, especially at the lower school, using technology to enhance the learning experience of our kids. Technology is a tool, but the end is to make sure that they're getting a better education. And then our commitment to making sure that all of our students feel very supported throughout their journey at Parker. Just a couple enhancements since last year for the lower school families. We now offer lower school Chinese as an academic course on a daily basis, and families will now choose either Spanish or Chinese, and their children will then matriculate from the lower school to the middle school with 5 full years of one of those languages. Upper school deans, for upper school families, your child or your children will have a 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade or 12th grade dean. They're committed to making sure that that 4-year high school experience is full, is balanced, and is right for your child. We have brought on a nurse. We had realized that a school our size, not having a registered nurse just was not appropriate. It wasn't good for our kids, so we brought in a nurse. We've got a wonderful nurse, Maggie West. We've brought on a JK-12 psychologist, Dr. Bridget Biesinger, who is there again to support our kids and for those kids who need someone to talk to beyond their teachers, beyond their coaches, beyond the administrators. She's there as a professional. Our summer extended programs continue to grow. We're seeing year over year 20% increase in the number of students and families choosing it. We've increased the number of courses we offer both in the summer and the extended program. And then in all 3 divisions, we're seeing curricular enhancements. A simple example is at our upper school for the 12th grade now, we've gone to an elective English course offering for the 12th grade year, and it's been very well received by both students and parents. Student wellness, this is at the heart of our mission. We are committed to it with our 4-year-old JKers all the way up to our graduating seniors, and really at the end of the day, it really is making sure that our kids are happy, our kids are well, and our kids are balanced. And this is just a shameless opportunity for me to show you my 3 beautiful daughters some time ago. I have a senior this year. It's hard to believe. But nevertheless, I hope that you too measure your investment in Parker this way, knowing that your kids are well. So that's kind of a snapshot of the school. And as I said, there's no one single way to look at the health of the school, but I really feel like looking at our finances, looking at our admissions trends, taking a peek at college matriculation, making sure that our academic program is top-notch, and making sure our kids are well, I think those are very critical indicators of just how we're doing. So here's the first of the 4 things that we're focusing on this year and in years to come. Accreditation. Every independent school must be accredited by an independent governing body. We're accredited by 2. CAIS, which is the California Association of Independent Schools, and WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And it's a joint accreditation. And we go through this process every 6 years. And really the goal of the accreditation is peer review, where we will have a group of independent school educators from a variety of schools in California come and review our school. This should foster excellence. It is great schools pushing great schools to become even better. It's a commitment to ongoing improvement. Parker is great, but there's always room for improvement. And it's also for us to be able to say to ourselves, okay, let's identify some clear, measurable goals that will ensure ongoing success and continued improvement. The accreditation looks at all parts of the program. It looks at the academics on all 3 divisions. It looks at the community experience that parents, students, and grandparents are having. It takes a look at governance to make sure that we have good governance from a board of trustees. And most importantly, it looks at the daily or the day-to-day life of our students to ensure that there is balance, there is rigor, and there is wellness there. A little bit about our accreditation history. We have been accredited since 1977. That's when this process was first started. And in each of our accreditations, we have received the full term of accreditation, which is kudos to the school. In 1977, our first accreditation was 5 years, which was the maximum. But since then, every time we have received the full term of 6 years. And we hope that at the end of the process this year, we will again receive that term, but it's something that's earned, not simply given. The first thing that a school is asked to do in the accreditation process every time they go through it, and this is true for every school, is to take a look at the mission. Because ultimately, what we're doing is we're measuring ourselves against our mission. In terms of program and student wellness and community, the question that the visiting committee asks is, do your practices match your mission? And so this is what they ask of each school. They say, take a look at your mission and ask yourselves, does it clearly articulate your beliefs and purposes? Does it capture your true identity? Does it prioritize those things that are of greatest significance? And does it address what not only you should be doing today, but what you should be doing in the future? So our mission has evolved, and this is something I think a lot of folks are simply not aware of. They think the mission we have now is the mission we've always had. So as you can see very quickly, each year that we have gone through the accreditation, we have responded to that first charge of looking at our mission, and this was the result. In 77, we formalized it. 83, 89, and in 95, the next 3 accreditations, we actually revised our mission. In 2001 and 2007, we took a look at the mission and reaffirmed that it was right. So the question remains, what do we think now in terms of our mission and in terms of its orientation? So I want to take just a couple minutes to walk you through the history of our mission, because I think it's important to have that context so that you can appreciate what the recommendation is in terms of our evolving mission statement. Have a little fun here. I thought in a political year that I would put up pictures of political figures or potential political figures of each era. So going back to 1912, the birth of our school, while we didn't have a formal mission statement, this was what we found in a lot of the literature, and the bold here is mine. But really quickly, in the beginning, it was really about citizenship. It was about focus on the individual, and it was about developing knowledge, power, and skill. And one of the reasons why I want to walk you through this quickly is you're going to see common themes, that even though the mission may evolve as a statement, the content, the substance, the heart of the mission always remains the same. By the way, that's Dwight Eisenhower. 1938, you can see the mission here was about creating efficiencies in our academic training. It was, now here we see it's more than the academics. It's about the emotional, the social, and the spiritual development. And I love the line here, it's about minds, imagination, and muscles. Again, that idea of the whole child that is so much a part of the Parker mission. Jimmy Carter. Probably recognize this gentleman. 1952, here's what we said about ourselves. It was about intensifying that individualized instruction. Again, you see the individual. It's about guidance, but here we see full and well-rounded education. Again, different words, but spirit remains the same. 1966, the wonderful 60s, what was Parker focusing on? This is the first time we see it's about preparing kids for college. But interestingly, it's not just about college, it's about college and life. Here we see a focus on small classes. I think this was a differentiator between Parker and other schools in the area. Modern equipment in the 60s, I'm not sure what was modern, but maybe it was the calculator. But still you see here it's about inspiring creativity, a little self-discipline, and a genuine learning. So again, the content remains the same, but the focus a little bit different. This, by the way, is someone running for President Mitt Romney, and this, of course, is the incumbent. What did we say about ourselves in the 70s? Now remember, this was the first time we were asked to formalize our mission. And as always the case, when asked to do something formally, we try to fit everything into the mission statement, hence the length of this one. But very quickly, it was about quality education. It was about making sure that we enabled students to accelerate in certain areas, whatever those areas might be. It was about preparing them to be a well-rounded individual student. And also, I love this last piece here, it was about making sure that we create an environment where the dignity and worth of each individual is respected. 1983, maybe not someone running for politics, but someone certainly who talks a lot about politics. I believe he was up for an Emmy last night. Here's what we said in the 80s. We made some revisions from the 1970s. It was an alternative educational program. I like here we said that now we want to go beyond the basics, a common theme at Parker. And here for the first time we see competitive in the application process. So in the 80s, we start to ramp that up. But we don't give up on the other things like making sure that the dignity and worth of each individual is respected. And for the first time we see in our mission our focus on diversity. And at the end it says to accomplish all the above in an atmosphere of broadened socioeconomic and ethnic mix. Well, that looked good, but then we wanted to tweak it a little bit more. So in 1989, and again, this is a bit of a stretch, not a politician, but someone who maybe should run for politics, David Beckham, because he's a great soccer player. Nevertheless, 1989, here's what we distilled our mission down to, preserving what mattered most. A diverse group of students, high quality education, commitment to excellence, self-esteem of the individual, creative thinking, leadership training. A little bit tighter, kind of closer to what will become something you might be familiar with. And that is, in 1992, our current mission statement was designed. By the way, this is Doogie Howser, and I guess you can't talk about the 90s without Doogie Howser. Anyhow, this is what we have. Superior college prep education, diverse family-oriented environment, needs of the individual student. We have had this mission statement since 1992, and in 2001 and in 2007, we had to re-examine that mission statement, and we said, you know what, it's okay. It continues to capture our priorities. It continues to focus on where we should be and where we should be going, and it's a great mission statement. But again, when we went through this process, we had to ask ourselves this question, and so we took that mission statement and we reflected on it. And there was process to this, and there were lots of people involved. And you can see it started with a committee, a self-study committee, last fall, a year ago, September. And we brought it to lower school, middle school, and faculty teams. We brought it to a board committee. We brought it to an all-school faculty meeting. We brought detail back to those faculties. And it was a very thoughtful process, and there was many suggestions and very, very healthy discussion and debates. But again, we looked at a lot of things. We looked at what we call the essential qualities of a Parker graduate. We said, let's start with the end product. What are we trying to give these kids as they graduate and move on from Parker? And what are our enduring values? As we went through all those mission statements, what were the things that were constant from 1912 all the way through to today? And let's look at our past mission statements, not just the current iteration, but all of our iterations, so that we can come up with what we believe would be the most appropriate mission statement about Parker today and Parker moving forward. So essential qualities example, these are the things that we say we want our kids to be able to do when they graduate. We want our kids to, yes, have academic excellence, but we want them to be balanced. We want our kids to be able to not simply be told what is the right thing to do, but be able to engage in that conversation about what they ought to do. We want our kids to be able to think critically. We want our kids to be able to communicate confidently and write persuasively. We want to make sure that they have the tools so that they can realize their individual talents and see their potential regardless of what path they may choose. And we want to make sure that they become part of not simply this community, but the larger, broader, more meaningful community, hence the idea that Parker himself started about global citizenship. So those are some of the things we look at. And then most importantly, we look at those enduring values. If we were to go back and look at any one of those mission statements, in each we would see these things. It's about excellence. It's about preparing, but not just for college, preparing for college and life. It's about being good citizens in their school, in their community, and in their world. It's about character development. Francis Parker said the end and aim of all education is the development of character. And it's about focusing on the individual, something we celebrate, something we believe deeply. There were two pieces in this last iteration of our mission statement that prompted the most discussion, and it was the college prep piece. Some people felt that if we took this out, we may be sacrificing something. But in the end, committees, faculties alike agreed that it's not just about getting into college. It's about preparing kids to succeed in college and beyond. As someone once said, it's preparing these kids to have the values and to be successful, not just when they're 18 or 19, but when they're 28 or 38 or 48. The other piece that was somewhat controversial, but ultimately folks agreed on, is the idea of family. We had a wonderful line in the mission statement that said we were a diverse, family-oriented environment. But in the end, the committee said this. They believe that the notion of family carries with it various definitions, and many are positive, but there didn't seem to be a single descriptor of family that captured all of these different definitions. And they didn't capture what we said, what mattered most, and that's the diversity and the complexity of who we are as a community. And so what we decided to do is to come up with this mission. And I want to read it to you, and so can kind of sit with you and ask yourself, does it capture the values? Does it capture those things that endure? Does it speak to our highest priorities? And does it not only capture where we are today, but orient us as we move forward? To inspire independent thinkers whose academic excellence, global perspective, and strength of character prepare them to make a meaningful difference in the world. So it's quite a bit on the mission statement, but it's very important. Not only because it's the first step of the accreditation, but because it is our mission statement. And we should celebrate it, we should feel good about it, and make sure that it's orienting us as we should. Next steps in the accreditation, we've been working on it all last year. Here's what's to come. October and November of this year, we will be refining what's called both the self-study and the action plan. The self-study is a document that we as a professional community have written, and we've basically said to ourselves, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? From that larger document, we create an action plan, which is saying, okay, of our weaknesses, let's list our top priorities to make us an even better school. In December, that document is complete, it's written, it's submitted, and it will be submitted to a visiting committee. As I mentioned, this is a group of independent school educators who will come together, read that document, and then they will be on campus for 3 full days, listening, asking questions, observing, in the hope that they will be able to validate what we both say is good about our school and about what some of our weaknesses are, but they might also push us to consider other areas that we might want to focus on. And the value of having this independent group come in and audit is, as you know, they bring that objective outside perspective, but it comes from professionals. So they'll be here in January. They will then recommend a term of accreditation. Again, The full term is 6 years. They'll recommend that term to the governing bodies, CAIS and WASC, and then we will receive the term in the late spring. So that's the accreditation. At the same time, we are writing our strategic plan. And I think the way that we can look at the strategic plan versus the accreditation is that the accreditation focuses primarily on program and is written almost exclusively by the professional educators, so teachers, staff, and administration, with some help from a few volunteer groups. The strategic plan looks at program and beyond. This is the visionary plan. This is the one that says, okay, what do we need to be doing now and in the future to ensure that our school is sustainable? I call this kind of accreditation plus. And this is one where we engage the entire community. And as you can see from my writings that have been going out electronically, we've already started this process. And the most important piece in the strategic planning process is the data collection. It's the focus groups. It is the surveys. And we have brought in a gentleman, Ian Simmons, who knows us extremely well, who is a professional in his own right and an expert in independent school strategic planning to help shepherd the process. And you will see that his focus will be listening, collecting that data, encouraging folks to fill out the surveys. He will also be looking at trends in independent school education. He'll be looking at the demographics of our competitive market. And in the end, what he will push us to do is to say, what do we need to do now to ensure that Parker is not only relevant, but that Parker is competitive and that Parker is true to its mission in 3, in 5, and in 7 years. And so some of the fundamental questions we're going to be asking ourselves during the process is, what is our purpose? As we like to say, what is the why? What is the why we do what we do? We're also going to say, okay, there are some things that must remain, those core values, those enduring values, as I said earlier, those programs, those characteristics that we have to keep so that we can sustain what is great about Parker now and in 7 years or even in 27 years. But probably the most important question that we have to challenge ourselves is what should be different. Change is not a 4-letter word. We have a responsibility to continue to evolve as an institution so that we are relevant, so that we are competitive, so that quite simply we are the best. And so we're going to be asking ourselves that question. And we're not going to ask it in a vacuum. We're looking at what's going on the independent school landscape and on the larger national educational landscape. So that's the strategic plan. I look forward to all of you participating in that, whether it's through a focus group or it's through a survey. Just to give you a little context here, back in 2002 when we wrote the plan, these were some of the kind of the visionary things that we said that we wanted to do. And just to call some attention, it was back in 2002 when we said that we want to continue to support non-traditional learners in a traditional school setting. And I really think when we look at what we've done on all 3 divisions, but in particular at the middle upper with the Learning Center, you know, Parker decided not to be a school that said, well, you know, students that have a different learning style or learn at different rates should be counseled out. Instead, Parker said every kid, every individual, regardless of their learning style, has in them both the capacity and the potential not only to succeed but to excel. And it's just a matter of supporting them. So that to me was visionary. Clearly, for the families that have been here for a number of years, you have seen the total transformation in our facilities on both the lower and the middle upper campus, and our newer families. You've been enjoying the fruits of those labor, and it's quite extraordinary. 2007, the last time we wrote it, a couple simple examples of the kind of the vision or the orientation. And the first one, it was, you know what, we need to take a look at language at the lower school. And, you know, I don't think we envisioned even then what we were able to do now, but it was absolutely the right thing, where now our families have language every day as an academic class, and it's either Chinese or Spanish. And as you see here too, as early as 2007, there was a sense that, you know, I think our mission statement, as good as it is, it needs some revision because the school's orientation is shifting. So the question is, what will be in this 2012 strategic plan? And we look forward to that, which we will ultimately write, complete, and share with the community in the spring of 2013. Second to last thing I want to share with you is the Centennial Celebration. It is truly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and we're living it this year. And we had decided philosophically that less is more. We learned from schools that had Centennial celebrations recently that the mistake they made is they tried to turn everything into the Centennial Celebration. So it was the homecoming centennial, it was the pet day centennial, it was the math test centennial, and in fact one school said that their culminating event, the end of the year celebration, that not only was attendance absolutely was very low, but people said what they really felt like they were celebrating was that the centennial was finally over. And we don't want that. We want the excitement to build to the final event, what we're calling the Big Bash in June 8th. So we have 4 events. The first one, hopefully you learned from your children, what took place not only on the hottest day of the year, but on the hottest field in San Diego. But the kids were amazing. Faculty, staff, students alike, all 1,500 of us came together on the field for a once-in-a-lifetime picture. We had a brief ceremony where the kids had identified some things they wanted to put in the time capsule, and then we rewarded them with some street tacos and some t-shirts and some Centennial cookies, and I'll tell you, they were absolute troopers. Big 3 events coming up here. You receive your invitation. I hope you consider joining us on these dinners on the 20th, and again, the focus here is celebration. Celebrate Parker. Come together with parents, grandparents, and alumni, and to share your stories, to share why it is that you choose Parker. Service has always been and will always be a big part of Parker, and so we said that then it would be appropriate for us to have a service day, celebrating our mission and embracing our local community. We are going to have a number of different opportunities that you and your children could participate in, from beach cleanup to a Habitat for Humanity type activity in the Linda Vista community. More to come. But the big event, we want everybody here, kind of a street scene idea, the Big Bash, where we come together, we celebrate, and we would love to see north of 1,500, 2,000 people all coming together during the course of that weekend. It's going to be a great year to celebrate Parker, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're celebrating Parker. But in truth, these are the things we want to celebrate, because this is what matters most. We celebrate our tradition. We celebrate our past, the fact that we have not simply been here for 100 years, but Parker has made an extraordinary impact in the San Diego community and the larger community over the course of those 100 years. We celebrate our people, because that's what matters most. And really, when we talk about people, we talk about our students and we talk about our amazing faculty, and then we also celebrate our promise. Very quickly, we have so much to celebrate, whether it's the opening of the Mission Hills campus back in 1913. In truth, the school started in 1912 in a small 2-bedroom home about 3.5 blocks away from the original Mission Hills campus, and there were 3 students. So 1913 was the official opening of this campus. And to give you a sense of just how much expectation, excitement there was about the start of Francis Parker School. At the ceremony, you just saw the picture of. These were some of the folks who came together, including Mr. Edward Hardy, who was the president of San Diego State Normal School, which is San Diego State University. And there's a quote here. The idea was that, in fact, Parker would become the example of what schools should be. And I quote, Parker would have a positive public purpose on education and the community, in the same way that Stanford was having a positive influence on higher education in California. Parker was, in truth, to be an experiment that would eventually phase out, because they would be the example, influence other schools, and those other schools would change accordingly. But the success of Parker and the determination of many faculty and parents had other plans. And so 100 years later, we can celebrate that early vision. In 1972, we purchased what was then San Miguel School for Boys. It was a boarding school, and we moved the middle school and reopened the upper school because for about 45 years we did not have a traditional high school, and so we started graduating seniors in the 70s again. And this picture is of a building that no longer exists, because instead, through the generosity of so many Parker families, we have transformed both the Mission Hills campus, looking here at the Constantine Library, and then the Linda Vista campus, which is the site of the San Miguel School for Boys, which, with the exception of the cafe and the middle school gym, no longer exists. But most important, here's what we want to celebrate too. Not just our past, but our people from the past. And these are names of folks who have come through, faculty members who have left a legacy. And some of these faculty members I have never met myself, yet I feel as I know them. I've been at Parker 12 years, and a number of these faculty members retired long before I arrived. But because of their impact, because of their story, I've learned their stories. And I continue to carry on that tradition, whether it's Fran Stiles, who many of you maybe read about her in the UT last week. Fran is still active in the community. Fran Stiles was our AD, and now she's competing in a variety of track and field events in the Senior Olympics. Or maybe it's like a gentleman like Ed Strange, who, as many people said, epitomized teaching, where he said the focus is about the kids and it's about the individual kid. And we now have an award called the Ed Strange Award that recognizes a faculty member each year who captures the spirit of Ed Strange and so many others like him. So we celebrate our people, both past and present. Most importantly, we celebrate our kids. And how do we celebrate our kids? Well, it's making sure that we're true to our mission. We make sure that we hold every child at the center. Individual child is our focus. We celebrate our values, that it's not simply about academic rigor, but it's about balance and about wellness. It's about the social, the emotional, moral development of our children. And we celebrate our promise. One of my favorite lines from our namesake, Francis Parker, he says, if you want to measure how you're doing as an institution, it's simple. He says, the direction I give to all is this: watch the child. If the light of pleasure is in his eye, then you have succeeded. And that's really how we celebrate Parker. That's how we celebrate our promise. That if we can light the pleasure in the eye of our child, if we can ignite that fire, if we can help discover or uncover that passion, then truly we've succeeded, and that's what we celebrate. And so the Centennial Celebration is really about celebrating Parker. The last thing I wanted to share with you before I wrap up is what I call sustaining what matters. There's no doubt there's so much to celebrate about Parker. There's so much that we love about Parker. And quite frankly, Parker is a place of excellence no matter how you measure it. But as a community, we have an obligation to sustain what matters, to make sure that what we have now will not only continue to be next year, but in the years to come. And there's one way that we will do that as an institution, and that's by growing our endowment. The beauty of endowment is that every single dollar that we invest in endowment stays with us in perpetuity. Endowment is not simply for those who can afford million-dollar gifts. Endowment is about all of us coming together as a community and saying that because of our people, because of our promise, that because we know what matters most, we want to make sure that we invest now in our school so that it will continue to be the wonderful, amazing school that we love and that we choose to send our children. So please join all of us as we continue to focus on sustaining what matters. So I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for listening, and I do hope that this is informational. At this point, I'd ask for questions, but I can't. Instead, I will say, if you ever have a question about anything, please know that my door is always open, and I would be happy to talk. Thank you so much.